and welcome to another episode of Navigating Life with Coach Lowe. I have a great guest on with me today. I have Jackie Zeigler with me. Jackie is a nurse and she is also an amazing woman of God. But I'm not going to give it all up. Jackie will do a much better job of letting you know who she is, who she belongs to, what she's doing, and a little bit about her story and what she wants you to learn from our time together. Jackie, do you mind sharing with the audience, who are you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. And thank you for reaching out after you read about my story and feeling that I had something to share. As I told you before, I was really hesitant, but I do feel like God can use even the worst things that happen in your life to help other people. So I'm glad to be here. And let me say, I'm not a nurse. I don't want the nurses coming for me saying that I'm pretending to be a nurse.
Okay, all right. So I had that really wrong.
I'm administration is my background. We work in the same place, but I'm not a nurse.
Okay. So you are what? What is your title?
I'm a healthcare administrator. Healthcare administration. And I'm also a speech language pathologist, but I do more in the healthcare administration now. I am a bonus mom to two kiddos, Kirsten and Alex, and I have I have a niece and a nephew that I adore, and my nephew is a lot like my own kiddo, at least when he's spending my money. I'm a wife. My husband's name is Neil Zeigler, and he is a physician. And because we both have a background in healthcare and a passion for helping people, we started a nonprofit a few years ago. So we do medical missions, and we help to establish healthcare in places that don't have access to healthcare. And so that's a big passion for me and for him as well. We do a lot of work in Haiti. We were hoping to get to Africa this year, but COVID-19 happened. So we haven't gotten there yet. And of course, we do things here in in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in our local community. And I, again, I appreciate you having me here because the reason I wanted to do this, even though I was hesitant at first, is that having gone through my own experience of loss with miscarriages and, this journey of infertility, I realized that there are statistically 1 in 4 women experience infertility or loss of an infant or a child, but it's not something that's talked about a lot. Oftentimes it feels like there's a stigma on it, and so women go through it alone. I went through it alone, and as I started kind of seeking resources, I started to kind of come in contact with these other women that were suffering in silence, and I felt, I prayed about it, and I admit I was not obedient at first in wanting to share my story, but after much prayer and contemplation, I really felt like the Lord was asking me, not asking me, commanding me that I needed to use this experience to help other people. And so that's why I'm here today. I hope that, I can light on the journey of infertility and what it's from the perspective of someone who's experienced loss. And maybe someone is going to listen to this podcast that has gone through what I've gone through, who is going through what I've gone through, and something that we can talk about can help them in their healing process or just to not feel so alone. So
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Jackie, because this is a much more prevalent situation in our community than we even know. And I believe that because you are in healthcare, you have an up close and more personal look at it. And much like you said, you have you have this whole experience with these other women when you sought out help for yourself and a community of people that could support where you have been. I love the fact that you did the due diligence of getting yourself some support and some help when you felt alone. Um, on your journey, you talked about you shared with me how there are so many misconceptions about how one could be infertile and the different things that contribute to those factors of loss. Uh, from the world standpoint and then from the medical standpoint. So, can you help us to understand what some of the belief systems of, well, you can't pick up this, and this is too heavy, and you have to protect your um, female physical parts, or whatever the thoughts are around that? And a lot of the times, some of those could be factors, but sometimes it can be
Mhm.
far from the truth. So will you help us to kind of understand what some of these differences are?
Yes, and I'll give it to you from the perspective of a woman who's experienced it because I'm not a reproductive specialist. So, this is not medical advice. But I grew up and still have an old school mom who's from the country. And so she has lots of home remedies and, all those things. And so we didn't share a lot with people when we first got pregnant because we were just kind of waiting to see what happened. But it was things like my mom would see me picking up a laundry basket and she's like, no, put that down, you don't need to pick up anything heavy. And like you said, there are some things that you can do that might put yourself at risk, and you have to talk to your doctor about those things. There may be certain things in the first trimester that your doctor may not want you to do when it comes to, aggressive physical exercise, particularly if you weren't exercising before. When you first get pregnant, is not the time to start going hard on exercising. So there are things like that that you need to talk to your doctor about, that could put your pregnancy at risk. But oftentimes, when particularly in space of miscarriage, it is your body's way of protecting you and protecting the infant. And when a miscarriage happens, it's usually because there was something with that particular embryo that didn't make it viable. And that's not something that I think a lot of people understand. And I would even say, I would go as far as saying, it's God's system of protection within our body as a woman to protect our infants that may be born with issues. And I'm trying not to go too deep or sound too medical because again, I don't want to give medical advice, but the body has, as it does with everything else, it has a defense system. And so miscarriages are oftentimes your body's defense, for you and for your infant. But a lot of women don't know that. And so they feel like it was my fault. And I felt that. I felt like not like I had done something, but I have a really busy life. And my mom always tells me, you need to down and you need to relax and you need to rest. And yeah. And I keep going. So, of course, I had those thoughts like, did I put too much stress on myself? Did I put too much stress on my body? Was it something that I did? Did I not eat right? Did I not take enough prenatal vitamins? Like, was there something that I could have done differently? But having that conversation with my doctor, he helped to reassure me that this isn't your fault. Now, for me particularly, I am what is called maternal age, and I hate that term, but it is what it is. Um, I was 40 the first time that I got pregnant, so with age there comes some risk, um, and it just is what it is. And so, um, one of the things that I would tell someone they were asking me, another woman, is please don't feel like it's your fault. talk with your doctor, see if there are things that you could have done differently, or if there are things that you can do to prepare your body if you want to try again to make it a more conducive space. But please don't feel like it's your fault or something that you did to cause it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay, and I mean, I think that that is such wisdom because you can't always prevent what happens internally. So,
Right.
so when I'm thinking about this, I understand you to be a woman of faith, and one of
Yeah.
the things that you shared was that you were angry with God. It was like, God, this is, I want to, how many miscarriages have you had?
3.
Three. So you talked about how that happened, and it was your third time, and so you were angry with God. How did you navigate your faith? How did you get back on track? Where did how did all of that happen for you as it relates to your circumstances versus your faith? How did you reconcile your anger towards your heavenly Father, if you will?
Yeah. You know, honestly, it took me a while. With the first miscarriage, I was shaken by it, and and my prayer at the time was, "Oh God, I've waited." I felt like I did all the right things, and tried to wait, and it's here, and I'm really excited. I felt like this was my miracle, and it didn't happen, but okay, you know best. I'm just going to keep going. We'll keep trying. The second one, and I should back up. I made that seem like it was really easy, but no. I from that After that first one, for the months following, I still was struggling. Um, I don't know if it wasn't so much that I was angry with God at that point, but Um, I was sad a lot. I kind of allowed myself to stay in a space of grief, um, and just kept praying and saying, I don't understand. But by the time the second one came and then the third one came, at this point, I was angry, like, okay, why do you keep allowing this to happen? I don't understand. And it did challenge me because it got to a point where it was hard for me to pray. It was hard for me to read my Bible and believe that I never doubted God's ability, but I did doubt his promise to me, if that makes sense. And so I felt angry that it kept happening, and I felt, well, you promised this to me, but it's not happening. And then I started doubting, well, maybe he didn't promise it. Maybe I didn't hear correctly. And so I was going through these cycles. And I talked with a friend, and she said, you got to find a tribe and get into a community, and you just can't sit in it by yourself. And so that's when I started looking for resources. I started counseling. I think in certain communities, particular communities where counseling is kind of taboo, but it's needed in certain circumstances. And it did wonders for me to be able to talk with someone. I went to a Christian counselor, and was able to talk through some of these things. But as I shared with you before, it was not until I signed up for a virtual class
Mhm.
called The Art of Hearing by Elder Christy Dobbins. And I was sitting in the class listening every Monday night. And then one Monday, she said something. And it was one of those Rhema moments where you've heard it before, but it never really hit you in the way that it has until in that moment. And so that it was revelation for you. But God just opened my eyes and my ears to hear what she was saying. That she said, on your God is sovereign. On your best day, God is sovereign. On your worst day, sovereign. He's always in control. No matter what's happening in your life, he is in control. And for whatever reason, something inside of me broke. And it just gave me so much peace. And I didn't feel that anger anymore. And it allowed me to see that even in that year prior to where I was angry and I was sad and feeling alone, God was still with me every single day.
Mhm.
I think, I was looking for this big miraculous thing to happen, some big grand gesture or some big grand sign. I started looking back at it. I was like, you know what, Jackie, you've been making it day by day. Every day you make it through the end of the day. It may not be a good day. You may break down crying, but you made it. And if you look back day by day, you wake up, your pain is a little bit less. You're crying a little bit less. You're more productive. You're starting to feel more like yourself. You're getting back into the things that give you peace and joy. And it was when I had to start looking for victories that I started to feel some peace and release that anger and say, okay, God, whatever it is, I don't understand. I understand why it happened, but you're in control. You have your reason. The Bible says your ways are higher than my ways, your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. And I have to have faith and trust you that for whatever reason you chose to not allow those babies to come into this world, that you're just and you're fair and what you're doing. And I have to leave it at that, because if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life in, in separation from him, essentially. Just for me, far worse than anything else I could imagine.
Yeah, that I'm so grateful that you got to a place of victory. But let's visit some of those things that you had to get through in order to get to victory, right? So one of the things that we talked about the attachment factor, how when you conceive a child, there is an attachment to that life. And so when the loss comes, you talked about the grieving process. And so that is very real, even for
Mhm.
a life that has been lost. So I mean, you have to it's just like you have to release so much. You have to let go of everything that you ever thought could become. So will you help the audience to understand what that journey of walking through that process was like for you? So you mentioned that some days it was hard, you were really sad and you were able to overcome those things, but if you could just focus on just the attachment piece.
Sure, sure. So like I shared with you before, it's the same as with any other woman who gets pregnant and has been wanting to be pregnant or is happy to have this life inside of you. From the moment that you see that positive pregnancy test, or for me, I was excited. I started planning what my children's futures were going to be like. I started thinking about names, going to Bye Bye Baby into Target and looking at stuff, and get thinking about what my registry is going to be, and what is my nurse going to look like all of those things that come with motherhood. I did those same things, and I started reading all the books, and because I would have been, I have bonus kids, but I've never had children naturally, so I'm like, I gotta figure it out. And I'm doing all the same things that moms or newly pregnant moms would do. And, when I found out that I was potentially hearing, I actually went to, the doctor, and you go in and, you're excited. You're expecting to hear the heartbeat. You're expecting to see your baby on the screen. Um, and when I was in the doctor's office, my husband was with me, and I could see the expression on their faces that something wasn't right, and I couldn't hear anything. And this was, my first one. I couldn't hear, and I was 10 weeks along. So I was almost through the first trimester. So I should have heard my baby's heartbeat, hear that. And it's like everything that all those moments of joy that you thought about, they start to come crashing down. And that's not the end of it. It's a process. It's not just that, okay, we don't hear a heartbeat and it's over. You still have this fetus inside of your body, that you now that same fetus that you had all the dreams for, is not alive, but it's still in you, and you have to go through a process still birthing that fetus. And so I shared this with you before, is I don't think people recognize, the process of miscarriage is not a 1 or 2 day thing. It can take weeks. Sometimes you have to go. Luckily, I didn't have to go through a surgical procedure, but my doctor gave me medication to induce labor, and I had to go through the process of labor and giving birth to my baby, knowing that at the end of that process, the baby that I imagined in my head was not going to be there. The dreams that I had in my head were dead, but I still had to deliver this baby nonetheless. And so that is, I think, probably one of the most difficult parts of it. And I I think not just for me, but for most women who have to go through this process. I'm a part of a support group, an online Facebook group, and I see women daily talking about, and they're going through it. They're posting, and they're going through the process because they feel alone. This is a place they feel like they can go, and other women can support them. And I'm grateful for those types of resources. But it is very difficult to have to go through that, and not have it turned out the way that you thought that it would. For me, I am fortunate that I had my husband to go through that process with me. My husband is a physician, so he understands the medical aspect of it too. And when I tell you, I'm God for him, because when I was going in through labor, he laid with me, he rubbed my back, he talked me through it and said, okay, do you understand what's happening now? You're in labor. Those are contractions that you're feeling. He's going through it with me, but he's being like the physician, but he's also being, my protector and my husband, and he's holding me up, and rubbing my head and put essential oils. So he's like, let me get these essential oils for you. And he turned on praise and worship music, and we're singing praise and worship music together, because really that was the only thing that I could do to help me get through that process without feeling like I was going to lose my mind.
I I love the fact, one of the things that you had originally said was that you talked about what you just said, but you talked about the fact that this was not only your journey, but you shared this journey, that the loss of these babies were both of your experience. And I love the
Yeah.
fact that you included your husband, and that, because he's a physician, he was able to wear both hats simultaneously. So even while he had experienced a loss, he understood that he needed to give something else to you other than just be your husband, but understanding what your body was going through and what it was that you were feeling and all of these things. And I just think that that is such a phenomenal dynamic, because I am sure that there are a lot of women with husbands that do not understand uh, that it is both of their experience. And even the woman, sometimes the woman can have a tendency to feel like, this is my experience, this is my body, and you really don't understand. But it really is a loss for both parents. And so I hope that this is something that both parents are able to hear and take something away from the fact that you, as a mother, you lost a dream, and so did your spouse. he lost a dream, but
Yeah.
together you were able to console one another in the midst of that loss. Another, did you want to add something to that?
Um, just that it is really important to recognize that it is a loss for both parents. I think, women, as we said before, the moment that you have this attachment, and I'm not a man, so I don't know, but I've asked my husband and I've asked a couple of other people, and I think there it grows. I think men are like very visual and hands-on sometimes, so as soon as they see like a kid footprint and then it's like, oh yeah, there's really a baby in there. But I think that it is really when you have a support, recognize that the loss is yours and his. And I had to be really intentional to not just focus on what this is happening to me, but this is happening to us. And so I had to take moments, even when I was hurting, to say, how are you? How are you feeling? How do you feel about this? Do you want to talk about it? And do you need me to be the strong person for you right now? You've been strong for me throughout this process, but do you need a moment, and do you need strong for you? And I think that's important. And even having this conversation with you, the way that we connected on this was because I decided to post on my social media accounts in October, which is National Infant Loss Month. I decided to post and tell our story. Excuse me. But I did not do any of that. Even having this conversation now without talking to my partner, my husband, because it is our story. And I wanted us to be in agreement that, this is something that we want to share. And if he didn't feel comfortable with it, then I had to take that into consideration. Now, luckily, my husband has a servant's heart, and he, can see that God will use our experiences, good and bad, to help other people. So he was open to it. He just said, if you're okay with it, are you okay with it? And as long as you're okay with it, I'm good with it too. So yes, that's a very important piece of it that I think sometimes gets left out. The men don't always get recognized in their experience and their loss as well.
Exactly. And so you mentioned how you felt alone. And what I don't want people to get confused is you're feeling alone with I don't want people to think that, okay, that it's about you. I don't want people to think that it is about you felt alone because your husband wasn't there. You guys were there together, working through this together. So it was not that
Right.
at all. The biggest part was that there were outside people, friends and family that you had shared this story with. And I asked you about how was that? What was that like? And to have people move on with move on with life, and you're still working through the different things, your loss, your grief, and everybody else has kind of moved on with life. Can you share that experience with us?
Yeah, it's a challenging place to be because for me, there wasn't anything that I necessarily wanted from my friends and family. Um, I wanted to be alone at first. I told people that said, hey, what can I do? Do you want me to come and sit with you? I mean, I can just come and be present and not say anything. Appreciate it. But it was a lonely space because when we talked about it before, I compared it to a funeral. You go to a funeral, and everybody shows up to show their respects. And they say, I'm so sorry for your loss. And the repast is over, everybody else goes home, life goes on. But that person who is experiencing that loss, and in this case, the mother's experience is loss, you're still grappling with this my baby or that person is no longer here. My life has changed in a way that I didn't anticipate, and I'm still grieving. I'm still trying to deal with it, but life goes on for everybody else. Um, and I don't think it's intentional or that to be hurtful. And I think oftentimes, particularly in the space of miscarriage, when you compare that to like a death of a spouse or a parent, even an older child, I don't know that people always weigh those things differently or the same.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know that because people don't really understand miscarriage or they haven't experienced it, that sometimes, and I see this a lot in the group that I'm in, that, people, I hate to generalize and say people, but I don't think it's always given the same weight,
Mhm.
the loss, because there was enough physical being to see to for other people to grow attached to. I don't think that it's necessarily given the same weight. Um, and so it is a lonely space to be. You don't want to keep talking. For me, I didn't want to keep talking about it, but I don't know. You still kind of want that comfort. I have my husband. I had my best friend was incredibly good about it, but when it came to that was after the first one. The second, we didn't even share, just because um, I don't want to say you feel like people don't care, but I'm not. I'm trying to. I'm trying to say this in a way where it doesn't feel like it's coming across disrespectful. But you're in a lonely space because people don't necessarily understand what you're feeling. They don't understand. Um, the constant sense of loss that you're having to experience over and over, and you haven't finished grieving the first one, and now it's happened again, and so it's this buildup of despair and grief. And for me, I'm very private, so I didn't really want to share with anybody, and I didn't want to. I'm not the type of person when something's going on in my life that I want to go and talk to everybody about it. So I just didn't want to talk about it. And that probably contributed to me feeling lonely because I kind of isolated myself. And that goes back to when I said counseling, seeking out resources. When I eventually did that, it did allow me an outlet to deal with those feelings. But I had to get there on my own, and it took me a while to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's just all the way around. This is just not a good experience. And so, one of the things that you shared was that sometimes, even in the medical community, there are just some things when you experience loss you don't want to hear. And so sometimes
Yeah.
people are saying things that you can feel are very insensitive to this particular situation. Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing, unpacking that for us where your experience has been concerned?
Yes. Um, I'm smiling about it now, and I'm saying that I'm hoping that this will help somebody else in the future. But, when you are miscarrying, you are in the throes of loss. And so, what I did not want to hear, and it was well intentioned. Every person that said it was coming from a place of care and concern and love. But what I did not want to hear is, you're still young, you can keep trying, you can, oh, you'll be able to have a baby. Well, all those things may be true, but I'm still dealing with the fact that the baby that is in me right now is dead, and the dream that I have right now is dead. And so all of those things may be true, but I don't want to hear that right now. I'm in pain. I have all kind of things going on and going wrong with my body right now, and I don't want to hear that. And I heard that even from the physician in the ER. I ended up in the ER on one of my pregnancies, and the that was there, she said that to my OB, said that to me. And you politely say thank you, but inside of me, it felt hurtful. And I know that that wasn't their intention. But it's just like, I need you to see me and see what's happening right now. And I don't want to talk about what could have been
Right.
because I haven't really wrapped mind completely around what's happening right now.
Right. Whew, Lord have mercy. I applaud you and your community for your ability to endure through this process of loss, because um you talked about you how you don't feel like the loss carried the same weight, and I can understand how you feel, and I could understand how someone else would feel if they actually experienced a person and had time and experiences with a particular person, and then this being
Right.
someone who actually lived inside of you. You have never met them or anything like that. So I think that there are two different lenses that you look through in order to see that. But I can respect the fact that they can be different. It is a different experience, but even in the difference of experience, there should be a level of empathy and compassion on both ends of the spectrum, because at the foundation of it, it is loss. And so I just want you to just pause for a minute to speak to the woman who might find herself in the same predicament as you. What are three things that you would like for a woman who hears your message on Navigating Life with Coach Lowe podcast? What would you like to leave her with?
I, we said 3. Can I make it 4?
You can make it as many as you want to. I just was, trying to help a sister out. But
Okay, I'll keep it to 4. The first thing that I would like to say is you're not alone. You feel like you're alone, but you're not. There are women who are going through, who have gone through the same thing that you are going through. Go out and find a community there. Like I said, I'm a part of a Facebook group. Technology is great in that sense, where you can now be connected to people without having to actually be physically in their presence, especially as we're living through a pandemic. Go out and seek resources, or it doesn't even have to be that. You don't have to go and talk to a stranger. Find somebody in your circle who you trust, who you feel safe with. Even if you don't want to talk about it, just let somebody be there for you, because you're not alone. And then also, in that same vein, you're not alone because God is with you. I know it doesn't feel like it. I know that in that moment, you're questioning everything that you thought you knew and believed about God. You may not understand, why He allowed it to happen. I understand that, but trust me, from somebody who's on the other side. They say hindsight is always is 2020. Like, looking back, I can see that God was with me the whole time. I didn't feel like it. But I can now see that He was with me the whole time. And so you're not alone. And please don't sit in it alone. Go out and find a resource for yourself. Find someone that you can talk to, get counseling, do what you need to do. The second thing is, you'll get through this. You will heal. It'll take time. You'll never get to a point where you don't remember that it happened to you. I don't feel like there will ever be a time in my life where I won't maybe mourn a little bit the loss of my children. There are still times where, I walk into Target and I pass by the baby clothes section, and, I have a small moment, and then, I move on. So I think that those things may always be with you from time to time. But what I found was, as I begin to try to take care of myself and be intentional about healing, every day I woke up and it got a little bit better. And I'm at a place where I feel like, am I completely healed? Probably not, but I'm so much further than I was, 6 months ago. Um, Also, I want to reiterate that while there are some things that people can do, I think generally most women are not doing things to put their baby in danger. So please don't feel like it's not your fault. Talk with your doctor, talk to with them, he or she, to see maybe what happened. There are lots of things can be done. They can do testing. They can do testing for you. They can do testing of your genetics, of your partner's genetics, all of those things that you can do so that if you do want to try again, there are preventative things you can do to try and hopefully have, better success on the next time that you try. But please don't carry the weight that it's your fault and you did something, because in most cases, unless you're, I hate that's out there, but unless you're being completely negligent and using drugs, or drinking alcohol, or doing things that are intentionally harmful,
Mhm.
it's not your fault. And my fourth thing that I want to say, and it kind of goes back to the lack of understanding for, I feel, for miscarriages, is to women who've experienced it mattered. It doesn't matter if you were 2 weeks pregnant, 4 weeks pregnant, or in your last trimester, your baby mattered. No matter how old you were in your pregnancy, your baby was real. Your baby mattered. And I would recommend that you do something to honor your child. For us, we did a memorial for our first one. We decided to give all three of our angels names. And I'm ordering a commemorative plaque. I have a snow globe. I did things, that I can have a personal attachment, a physical attachment and reminder of them. And that may be different but your baby was real, it mattered, and do something that gives you some closure, um, and to help you to remember that your baby was here.
I love it. I absolutely love it. You added that fourth one, and I think that it is such wisdom to share with other women. I one other thing that I would like for you to help with is you talked about counseling and you talked about the Facebook group. Are there other resources that you found helpful for you? Because I believe that at the end of the day, when we go through these kinds of challenges in life, right, is that how do you get back to a place of joy? How do you get through the process of healing? So, what were some of the, I don't know, unique things that you may have done, particular groups that you are connected to, if you don't mind sharing those resources? And even if you don't have those names, you can give them to me and I'll put them in the description so that people will have access to the how to.
Yes, I will definitely give you some resources to add to the list. For me, there were a few things that I did. One, it was really my relationship with Christ and with God has always been really important to me. So when I started recognizing that I felt some separation, I started being really about um, getting back into my Bible. Like I said before, I found it hard to pray for a while. I found it hard to study my Bible, but I had to be intentional and just go in. I have a prayer closet. I would go in my prayer, and even when I felt angry, I would say that. I said whatever I felt to God. So I was in, even if I didn't feel, like he was responding, I started being really intentional about doing that. I also started listening to my worship music again and my praise music again, because what I found myself doing was sitting in silence and in my thoughts. And that is dangerous, at least for me, because, the mind can be your biggest enemy. It's the Joyce Meyer's book, Battlefield of the Mind. The enemy will use your mind. And I started realizing, hey, no, you can't take my mind. So I started trying to combat those thoughts with, okay, I'm going to turn on some worship music and some praise music, even if I don't feel like singing a word, or even if I don't have to do something to combat those thoughts. And I don't know if it's unique. I found that as I've gotten into some of these groups that it common is, I got a puppy, and you've seen my my social media post of my baby, my fur baby. She is spoiled, but I got a puppy, and it gave me something to nurture. And she's so sweet. So, it helped me to feel like this unconditional love. And I kind of say she's my therapy animal sometimes, but it gave me something to nurture, and it gave me something to focus on, just being in my own thoughts about things. So I think you have to find your own unique ways. And I will say one thing that is challenging about this particular time, being in COVID-19, or in the pandemic, is, I was stuck at home. I was trying to do the right thing and stay at home. So, I had to be intentional about doing things like going outside and just taking a walk, or getting out of the space and getting fresh air, and when the sun is out, going out and getting sunshine. Those things invigorate me. So you have to look at yourself and know the things that give you joy. And the last thing I'll say is, I made a list of the things that give me joy and make me happy. So of those things, like I said, is being outside, sun. I like fresh flowers. Um, I tried to be intentional about doing one thing on that list every day. And it doesn't have to be something as big as going to get flowers, but going outside and breathing in fresh air. Or I like to work out, so getting a workout. And I made sure that I did one thing a day for me, for self-care, to help me not stay focused on um, the negative things. I tried to focus on the good and find the positive things, and have gratitude for that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Wow, it's just interesting. I just keep there's so much that I'm kind of thinking about, because I know quite a few women who have had this experience, and it's just always unique when I talk to different people, just the different things that they have gone through. But you gave such really good things to do to self-care, tips for self-care. That was just really, really great. And I like the fact that you said you committed to doing at least one of those things on a daily. And I think that sometimes we feel like we need to do it all right now, because in order to get results, we got to do it all right now today, and you don't. And so taking that time, the Bible says to put on the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. And so I like the fact that you worshiped your way through it, even as you were releasing the life of your child. Your husband played worship music. You guys sang together the praises of God, ushering in the Holy Spirit. Um, when you start talking about spiritual things, there's always a war, right? We're always in
Right.
spiritual warfare. And so just to be able to praise your way through as you are going through this process is powerful, because in the end, God has won in your life. You have overcome. You didn't want to share. You got over your what ifs and I don't want tos, and you got over all that, and you said yes, and here you are. It started with a Facebook post, but only God knew what would be next. So I saw the Facebook post, and I'm like, hey Jay, what about this? And so here is yet another opportunity for you to get a little bit more comfortable in the new skin that God has placed you in, this place of purpose, this place of destiny that God has for you. You are a healer. When I'm thinking about some of the things that you talked about in this segment, of navigating life, I'm just like, wow, some of this information is transferable to other circumstances. So it is not just this one thing, you know? And so I just want to say thank you so much for being transparent. Thank you for saying yes to God. Thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing him to use what may have seemed a mess to you in a season into a message of healing for others. You know, God is faithful in that. So the tears that you cried, he's collected them and he will not waste them. He will cause them to prosper. He will. Our pain will not be wasted ever. And so I just want to say thank you so much for your yes. That's what it takes. It takes a yes. It takes us getting past our mind monsters. Oh, well, what if? And what are they going to say? And how will people look at me? And blah, blah, blah. People will always have an opinion, but God bless the one who has been there and need what you have to share. So if it's that one, that's one of the things that you shared with me before. If it's one, it's worth it. If it's one. So I just want to say I want to applaud both you and your husband on the decisions that you've made and the way that you have loved each other through this process. So again, I say thank you, Jackie, for sharing with us. Jackie's message will be called Jackie's Angels, the the pain of delivering a dead dream. That is going to be the name of this episode. And, you know, that may sound morbid to some people, but so many people don't recognize that that is actually what is happening on the inside of many women in the day to day. Jackie mentioned that there's 1 in 4 women who have experienced this. That's a lot. That's a lot. If it's 4 of us in a room, at least one of us has experienced miscarriage. That's huge. So I just I don't know. I have so much more to say, friends, and I'm sure that Jackie could add to it, but we have got to go. So we love you. Jackie, is there anything else that you would like to share? One final thought, anything that has come up since I've been rambling, but anything that you would just like to share, final thoughts around this episode?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you allowing me to share that is my vantage point, and people go through their experiences differently. So I hope that there is something that I've said, that, as you said, my intention has never been to share because I'm seeking empathy or compassion, which I appreciate those things, but I really did to share because I wanted to, if there's one person that hears this, or if there was one person that read my Facebook post or my social media post and it helped them, then I'm satisfied with that. But I would like to say for other women who have gone through this, reach back to help somebody else, in any way that you can. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're going and sharing your story with everybody. I'll give one quick example because I know we have to go. Is one thing that I've done or I've started doing, is one of the groups that I'm in, the online groups that I'm in. I don't know those women. Do is go in and pray for them, call them out by name before God when I see that they're struggling, and whatever they're struggling with, and they're reaching out for help or they're reaching out to express their grief, I just pray for them and I call their name out to God. They don't know me, they don't know that I'm doing that, but I believe in the power of prayer, and we all have the ability to do something. So you don't have to share your story to help somebody else. Just find ways that you can use your pain to do good for other people.
Wow, so powerful. That is it. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's just one more amazing nugget. Jackie, we love you and we appreciate you right here. Lovely. You are just a lovely angel. You are an angel yourself in the living world. Thank you for being a light to us today. And we appreciate you
Thank
like
you.
nobody's business. So thank you so much again for your courage in sharing and just being here with us today. Thank you for continuing to do the work of prayer and for others, but the healing of Jackie. So thank you so much, sweetheart, and we will talk to you later. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.